Okay, so we're going here, and welcome, everybody.
Hey.
Let's start by going around the room, and we can all introduce ourselves. Why don't you go first over here?
Okay. Hi, my name is Dale. I work at Emory University in a lab called the Touch and Report Facility. I'm the primary FileMaker developer at that lab.
I'm Zach. I work here at 360 Works. Very new to FileMaker, very new to the whole thing, so happy to be here.
I'm Jesse. I work here at 360 Works.
I'm Michael. I also work here at 360 Works.
I'm Todd. I'm in between jobs.
I'm Joe. I work at 360 Works.
I'm Junior. I've been at 360 Works for 2 months now.
I'm Banyai, FileMaker trainee, wannabe, desperately looking for work.
And my name is David Nandel with Blue Feather. So today's meeting, our topic is DevCon 2017, and we're going to be sharing some of the things that we learned. We also have another guest here, Athena. All right, we're just doing the introduction. Do you want to come by and do your introduction here?
Hi, Christy, Mike Advantage.
All right. So we want to talk about some of the things that we learned at DevCon. So I'm going to present something that I learned today. Jesse, you're going to do a presentation as well, right?
Yeah.
And then Michael, you'll have a little bit that you can talk about. There were a few other people who were supposed to be coming with some things to present, but Catherine's sick, and some other people, I don't know where they are. So
I can tell you which sections that she said were good. I can't really tell you that about.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll just talk about them in general if it's things that people went to and are familiar with.
Okay. What is
So,
that?
I've got a virtual machine running and it means about something.
So your audio goes through it.
Mhm.
Oh, that's cool.
So let's go through here, and I'm going to start sharing my screen here. All right, so I learned about at DevCon this year was the idea of using Node.js to do push essentially to FileMaker clients. If this might be the use case, for example, if you've got a FileMaker solution open and maybe someone submits a new order and it's going to a particular sales rep, and you want that sales rep to be alerted that a new order in their territory just got submitted in, because they need to call them right away they need to call the customer right away to get in touch with them. Or I think people use a demo for chat things, but essentially you're allowed to. This technique allows you to push information, to push notifications to FileMaker clients. And so to prepare for this, we've got 2 files here. I'm going to open this up on this virtual machine. I've got a Node client, and I've also sent this file to a couple other people in the room here. So I'm gonna change this here.
Hey, Erica, how you doing?
Okay, so yes, please, if you had it open before, please close it and open it again.
Oh, the database you sent us?
Yeah, if you already had it open. Dale might have had it open before too.
Yes.
Okay, so I've got this here running on just a virtual machine running on my computer. And there are no external data sources to it. These are all just totally independent files. If we look at the data structure, there's, oops, oh, there we go. There's just one table, no relationships, no external data sources.
It's a local file.
Yep, just a local file sitting on this computer. You could do this with FileMaker Server as well, but in this demo, I'm just doing this for, with local files, which actually is kind of a nice feature that you can also do this with local files. And there's just one script on here, which is just this test script, and it just sets some fields and shows a dialog to show that we've received this value. So these files are all independent, and it's running. 2 other people have this running on their computers. I can actually see here I'm running a Node server on my machine, which shows I can track and see that the users have connected to this. So I'm going to open up this other FileMaker file now. And we could do this with anything. I've got a little web viewer that I can type some chat into here. But I'm going to type a message in here that's going to say hello from David, and hit enter on here. And as you can see on this client, it triggered this script and set the fields and got a pop-up. So these are all totally independent files. They're not connected through FileMaker Server. Everyone has separate copies of this file. And I'm able to push data to them and trigger things. So this is.
Does it have your IP address hard-coded into the file?
So yeah, the file knows where this node server is, and the way this is actually working is on this this node client file. There's actually a tiny little 1-pixel web viewer right here, which is opening an HTML file that has some JavaScript that is establishing a WebSocket connection to this this node server, which is running on my machine. And what I've done on this side is when I type something in here and submit it, it's sending a notification to the node server, which then broadcasts that message to all of the clients which have connected to the node server using WebSocket. So I can see here, if I pull this back up, we can see when users are connecting and disconnecting. I think we had, you can see there's a number of connected clients on there. So this broadcasts the message to these listening WebSocket clients, and they're just running in a 1-pixel web viewer on the layout. And when they receive that, they're using JavaScript to open a URL, and we're using an FMP URL to trigger the script to run on the open file. We know the file name too, so we're using the open file that they've got, and trigger a script with a parameter. So that's how I'm able to use this to, so don't save here, to send a message. Oops.
But the broadcast message is not a direct message, like a text that you're sending.
Right. So you could do it to a limited set of people, but in this case, I'm sending it to all of the clients, and they're all totally separate. They're not connected through FileMaker Server. There's no external data sources or anything like that. But they just have this 1-pixel web viewer, which has established a WebSocket connection and is listening to these broadcasts to happen.
And that does require us to give this layout, correct?
Yes, so it is dependent on having the web viewer on your layout.
Okay.
In the layout, the file has to be open.
Yeah, right.
I was going to ask what happens if you're in layout mode when the message.
So you wouldn't get the notification if you were in layout mode.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Were you in layout mode?
No, I wasn't. I was just saying if I could break it.
But it's a pretty cool feature, I think. And the only other way to get something similar to this is maybe have an on-timer script trigger that runs and checks for some values in a preferences table or something like that every few seconds, or does a query somewhere. And it could, depending on what you're doing, interrupt your user's session and give them a little loading thing while it's processing your script.
You could use a remote scripter plugin to do that. But I mean, like, natively is the only way to get to do it.
Yeah. A remote scripter is a good way to handle that as well. But this is cool, and then it's pretty easy to deploy. I don't have anything installed on these clients on my machine, which is running the server. I've got Node installed, and there's a very small, really simple application which is running here. Here's the server. That's it. That's the whole thing. And so it's not a lot of code to make this run.
That's cool.
And then I've got a slightly more complex client, but it could be a lot simpler than that. This is just an HTML thing, which it's serving when it connects to it.
I'm not a JavaScript expert, but I don't understand how line 24 is listening.
Mm-hmm.
But then what is the callback? How does it know what to do when it receives a request?
So it goes and does these things here.
Why those things? How does it know to do those things?
I guess this is how Socket works. I started looking into this at like 2 o'clock this afternoon, so I definitely don't know a ton of what's happening here.
It just doesn't seem like there's any parameters being passed into line 24 that would tell it what to do when it gets that request.
So what I believe this is doing is starting a listener, and this is the thing that gets activated. And then here, there are specific triggers that it's looking for. So there's connection being established, and then there's a couple of triggers that you can set in here, and that's how it handles the different things. But yeah, I'm not, I guess this is just, this is enough for it.
Is
Like I said.
IO like a global variable?
It's,
a module there. It's you import using JavaScript, and that carries all that functionality with it.
So
I think what it is I think this IO here is, I think it's casting to this other class or something like that. So we can use this HTTP as like a static function. And I believe that's getting used right down here. So we have this socket here. I think it's calling it down here.
3 is where the connection happens.
This starts the listener here. This establishes the class essentially and brings it in, so that it's like including it.
The line 3 is where we know that IO goes with HTTP.
Yeah, right. And then this starts it, and then we've got this variable IO that we've set these other things that we want it to do on.
JavaScript often feels deliberately obfuscated. I mean, it's cool. It's
Yeah,
cool.
I don't know. I'm not a JavaScript expert, like I said, and I definitely don't know anything about Node other than literally a couple hours this afternoon reading about it. And my goals were so the thing I learned at DevCon was Node, WebSockets, and trigger things in FileMaker, and I kind of went from there. No, I can't remember who did it, but I didn't take very good notes, and I didn't remember enough from it, so I got the concepts and worked from there. And I think I know some of the other things that they showed is that they were using the Feather, Feather.js, like a node wrapper type thing, and it makes it very easy to deploy it apparently. So you could run it on a user's clients by exporting this application essentially to a temp directory and then running a command line command to start the server and start it listening in the background. So cool. So clearly I was not paying enough attention, but I got I think some of the general concepts.
Makes sense.
And it's kind of cool. I mean, you get push notifications to FileMaker then, or you can push data into.
Client code. Like
What's in the web here?
Yeah.
So I'll show. Let's pull that up on here too. So there's just HTML.
Okay, this is what I was looking for.
Yep. And so some of it's a little more complex than it needs to be, but the important part is right here. This is saying what value. This is for pushing it up essentially. This is what allows me to push the message out to everyone else from my client. Now we could also, there are a lot of other ways we could do this. This doesn't have to be in the HTML at all. This part is not necessary. But this is the listener right here, which tells it what to do. This is the important part. We could trigger this in a number of different ways just by opening a URL using the insert from URL script step if we change the way that the messages were being sent. But in the short amount of time that I had, this is the way I got it working. So but this is the important part. So it has the socket connection, and when it receives it, this line isn't necessary, but this is the important part right here. This is, we're using an FMP URL to trigger the script with a parameter.
Now, if we do, it looks like we're changing the location of the Windows URL. Is this JavaScript going to continue to run after we trigger it?
Yes, because it's an FMP URL, the browser or the web viewer in this case can't handle it, and so it goes to another application and it never leaves.
Okay, so
where
this
the
will
user is.
continue to receive other requests.
That's right, yes. Even in, like, if you open up Chrome or something like that, you type in an FMP URL, it doesn't navigate the user away, it just sends it to the other application.
Does it work in WebDirect?
I don't, so the script triggers from URLs and FMP URLs do not work with WebDirect, so this wouldn't have any effect for that. It would reload the entire, you start your session over essentially if you use the WebDirect URL.
And FileMaker Go?
It'll work.
Yeah, it'll work with FileMaker Go.
Yeah, we actually demoed that at Pause on Air. He uses it for a clock in, clock out on mobile. So whenever they're working, they just open that app on their phone and let them go. and it does this, uses Node.js to connect to the server and push, hey, I'm on, and then every 5 seconds does that push every time.
Mhm.
So if you close the app, it automatically clocks you out.
Oh, cool. So it doesn't have any really, not much user interaction. They just leave it open until they're done.
Yeah, I mean,
Although I feel like you could do the same thing with like an on file close script trigger.
yeah, I think he planned to do other things with it,
Mhm.
interact with timing and tracking time, but the demo that he had was only for tracking time.
Yeah. So it's an interesting concept, but still, it's a different way of sending and receiving data from FileMaker clients. In this case, we're not using server at all.
Using this, so I assume it's the server that is getting the disconnected notifications. That would work even if somebody like abruptly close their laptop or turn off the Wi-Fi, working on file close with them.
That's right. That's true. Absolutely. And so we can see that on here too. If I go back to this, I can see when users are connecting and disconnecting. You could trigger whatever you wanted from here on the server. You know, you could send notices to other clients that someone else is disconnected. If I position this right, you can see that when I close this, there's no script triggers on it. It should, we get the disconnect message popped up right down here.
And then you could technically create a front end for your server, quote unquote, your server JS to see, like, to count or.
Mhm.
Yeah, have some web interface to this information.
So I think this is a very simple demo of it, but there's a lot that you could expand upon here, where you're triggering things, if you're sending things to the client, if you're doing things on the server, you know, could all interact with FTP URLs, or you could get more complex than that and use, you know, the XML gateway and send a whole bunch of data through those things. And there's lots that you could do.
The node server doesn't have to be kind of FileMaker server at all. It could be on Lambda or something.
Mhm.
It could be anywhere.
Yep. So it's, I mean, and like I said, there's no FileMaker server at all in this case.
Right.
Did anyone
These are
talk
just
about,
totally separate clients.
Did anyone talk about the security about it? Because you could technically, from that application, do whatever. You could, I mean,
Well, you can only trigger the one script that is set. Well,
I mean, that script can do anything with whoever's logged in.
So that's an issue with FMP URLs in general,
Mhm.
is that it's really easy to trigger them. I think that's why FileMaker 16 put in the new allow FMP URL trigger permissions.
Right, but this is, I mean, one is like from your own machine.
Mhm.
This is like allowing this other centralized thing to basically affect all the users.
Or whichever subset you wanted it to, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, so you'd want to make sure you're using an HTTPS connection, which I'm not in this case. So that would help with your security. And, you know, I don't think...
I guess there's nothing fundamentally about this technique that is particularly insecure. It's that this kind of demonstrates that any URL that you put on any web viewer could potentially trigger any script it wanted in your FileMaker database.
Right.
Mhm.
And one is you, the user, doing it to an extent, whereas this one you are basically opening it up to some unknown source.
So I guess it's, well, maybe what you're saying is that having the web viewer there is exposing a vulnerability that someone else could set up some sort of node thing that you're connecting to. You wouldn't know about it. You'd have a WebSocket connection, and they could just trigger things just from you having a web viewer there. That's someone says, hey, you want to see your project status? Add this web viewer into your FileMaker database. You know, and then all of a sudden they're triggering whatever they want in your solution.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no way of it, you know, part editing or confirming that the web viewer stuff you're using is valid.
Not unless they actually change how the FTP URL works.
Oh.
Because the problem is not anything about the solution that David's showing us. The problem is basically that it demonstrates that just simply having a web viewer, putting in a URL, if that URL takes you to the site, if that site knows anything about FileMaker and about your database, it can remotely trigger that. It can remotely trigger scripts to run. So David could make his thing as secure as he wanted. It wouldn't change that fundamental
Yeah, the external part of it.
external part.
Could you, now you've got like a data URL in there.
No, it's just a regular URL. You could do a data URL,
Where's
but
the HTML page hosted?
on the Node.js server here.
Okay, so it is a hosted page.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be though.
No, but what I'm saying is that, I mean,
That makes it less secure.
the way you do it is less secure.
But it wouldn't matter.
But at least you as the developer, if you're using a data URL, I mean, if your developers mess with your stuff, he's messed with your stuff. But
Yeah.
if you for whatever reason are integrating with some external website and then you're just loading it, or maybe it's like someone's personal homepage,
Mhm.
the contact.
Yeah, if you don't know the source that you're connecting to,
Right.
yeah, I mean, you have to probably open up in a browser and inspect that code, but they could change it 2 minutes later and you wouldn't know about it without checking it over and over again.
But I guess Michael's point is that if you use a data URL, you would actually type in the script name, you would hard code the name of the script into the web viewer itself.
Yeah.
And then there's nothing that can be changed on any particular server to change at least which script ran.
Yeah.
You know, when that thing ran.
But if you're connecting to a server here, hopefully it's something that you control. You know, like in this case, it's the server that I set up.
I mean, you just type in any random web address.
Yeah, but again, that's just back to the issue of it doesn't have to. We don't have to do anything having to do with HTML file, or we do a redirect to an FMP URL.
Yeah.
You know, and anything involving the web, even just browsing the web in that could trigger a.
But if you
file
hard-coded it into your web viewer as the data URL, then you're not vulnerable to that particular type of thing. You're not vulnerable to somebody on the web server going, I'm gonna fuck with data.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're gonna mess with data. And
We'll figure out how to do bleeps later.
you know, I mean, so doing it as a data URL would probably be, I guess it depends on what you think the likelihood is of somebody being able to hijack your server or do a man-in-the-middle attack and change the DNS of your server or something along those lines.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be vulnerable to those things, which may or may not be an issue
That's true.
if you were doing a data URL.
And that's why FileMaker added that extra. There's an extended privilege set.
Yeah, that's what's on
It's
16.
Can you pull it up real quick?
Yeah. Because I had to go and turn that. I was like, oh yeah, gotta enable that
The
here.
first time you log in as a full access account and say you don't have this account doesn't have permissions to do something. It's under extended privileges.
There it is.
To allow URLs to perform FileMaker scripts.
So that's off by default.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to have this enabled. With 16 only. This service, this idea, that obviously worked with the earlier versions of FileMaker as well. But 16 is the first one that has this.
So you have to enable that for all users.
Anyone who you would want to use this sort of a feature, yes.
But you would enable it in the database.
Right.
You know, it's not going on the user's computer.
So, you know, there are lots of other use cases where you'd want to have that on besides this push type thing
Like
using
what would
Node.
be another case?
So a lot of people have been seeing using web viewers for doing tables with accordions in them. Because you know FileMaker doesn't do accordion stuff very easily. So I've seen some people use web viewers with that, and you click a button in there, and then you trigger something back in your FileMaker Pro client. There are many different reasons why you'd want to use a web viewer in your FileMaker Pro client to send data back to FileMaker. I've used it for rendering a chart using Google Charts, and it gets it sends all the data back.
Maybe like Google Maps and you have pins, and you click on the pin, and it could pop open location information about it inside FileMaker.
Okay.
So there are many use cases for the FMP URLs
Okay.
in general, but it's always, I mean, yeah, like what you guys are talking about, it's been kind of weird that just anyone can do it. It's whatever they want, and there's not really any control. But I guess an important thing would be validating the data. You know, like if you're you have to treat it, I guess, like a web server that someone could post data to. You know, you don't want to assume that it's good. You have to validate it before you process it.
Do you there's no way to know if a script is being called because it's being triggered by an FMP URL. There's no like.
Not that I know of. Which is unfortunate because I know a lot of people, and I've had use cases for this. I've seen other people online asking about this too, wanting to know the source of the current script, like get parent or get source or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It's there in the debugger.
yeah, the call stack is.
Yeah.
But there's not a
There's not a
function
function
that would get it. Yeah, that'd be
And then
useful.
I'm thinking like you have to just code your scripts defensively, like
Mm-hmm.
especially if it's going to be an FMP URL. Like, you have to like pass some hash that the script checks to see if like you called it properly.
Well, you have to use the data URL in the first place to make sure that it's calling a particular script, because if you're just loading an HTML URL, it can call any script in the solution. If you've got 2,000 scripts, you can call any of 2,000.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So like, do you have to make like, do all your scripts require like this extra parameter check that?
But if you did the data URL, like you were talking about, then the only script that could possibly be called is the one that you hard-coded into the data.
No, he's just talking
Right.
about if you have this permission enabled in your solution,
Right.
an FMP URL opens you up to a user just being able to type in. It's like, I know there's a script in there somewhere that's delete all records.
Oh, right.
You know, FMP and then script equals delete all records, and then it'll just run.
But I think that, yeah, I think it's important to assume there's all sorts of security vulnerabilities in FileMaker that are irrelevant if you use record level. Or I didn't put the field in the layout so they can't see it, or anything along those lines. Those are always pretty easy to get around.
All I have to do is add that file as an external data source, and you've got access to whatever you want with it.
You can kind of lock that down. You know, you've got that feature to control which files can externally access. But even that feature, it's irrelevant if you do the record level access privileges correctly. And so if you just start with the assumption that anybody can access any layout and can put any field they want on any layout and run any script, but you can still use record level access privileges to control what data they have, then, you know, all of those things are, you know, much less important.
So,
Is there a way to trigger a script that like, if you call an FMP URL, can the FMP URL like return data to the JavaScript that called it?
I don't think there's anything comes back from that. I know from if you're using the XML gateway, then you do get data back from that.
Right.
But I don't think with FTP URLs, because I've never seen anything come back from those.
But with the XML gateway, you would need to log into that. Whereas with the FMP URL, if the database is open, you're already logged in. So XML gateway is, I think, inherently safer in that regard.
Yep.
I can change topics completely and talk about something cool that was in the keynote. And there's certain parts of the keynote that we can talk about, and there's certain parts that they specifically say are confidential. So I'm not talking about anything confidential. But something in the non-confidential section that I thought was really, really exciting, really cool, is that they got some huge deal closed with Apple, where they are now going to have installed on every Mac in every Apple store, and they're loading a special version of FileMaker so that if you click on it to launch it, it's not just going to come up with the standard FileMaker kind of empty database. It'll come up with like a little tutorial and some cool little things that, here, let me walk you through a little guided tour of some stuff you can do in FileMaker. And they said that they're also doing like a training program with like every Apple Store employee, which is 60,000 people. They're going to do this huge training program to get all the Apple Store employees familiar enough to demo FileMaker to customers. That was the only piece of news to come out of DevCon. That would be a pretty big deal. So I thought that was.
So basically, they're making FileMaker as accessible as Access for Microsoft.
Yeah, FileMaker will be hopefully to Apple what Access.
So it's basically you get Pages, Keynote, and then you get FileMaker.
They're not including FileMaker for free when you buy a Mac. They're just making sure that there is a demo version of it installed on all the Macs in the store.
Oh, a demo version, and then you can have the option to buy it once.
Yeah.
I don't think there's I don't think FileMaker's come in pre-installed when you buy one. Just when you go into the store, all the machines that are set up will have a copy of FileMaker.
Oh, okay.
So that, yeah, if you're like, what is this FileMaker thing? You can click on it and see what it is.
Okay.
And maybe more importantly, if you talk to an Apple Store person, you're like, I need a system that is going to be used by my insurance adjusters for hail damage. They might say, well, I don't know anything offhand that does that, but let me show you this FileMaker tool that we have. You know, and here it is, and you can go on FileMaker's site or go on the Apple Consultant Network or whatever and search for somebody who could help program this. And that was another thing they mentioned, is that there's you know, FileMaker's got their FBA program, FileMaker Business Alliance. Apple has their ACN program, Apple Consultant Network. We're not currently a member of ACN, but I feel that we probably should be, because it sounds like there is a new category or keyword or tag or something like that being added for Apple Consultant Network members for FileMaker. So I have a feeling that the Apple Store reps are going to probably tend to recommend ACN members with FileMaker as one of their, you know, keywords over an FBA person. Because the FBA doesn't really have any real relationship with Apple, whereas the Apple Consultant Network, that is directly part of it. But, you know, I just think that maybe it'll lead to people actually knowing what we're talking about when we say FileMaker. You know, I mean, it's amazing to me that when you go into a place, even with a place that's all Mac, and you say FileMaker, you know, if it's not one of us or someone who comes to these meetings, they're like,
I mean, back in the day when I was transitioning from PC to Mac, you know, just loading up with all the software, getting all the software set up. I remember walking into there and I saw the Office that they had in the box. I said, "Where's Access?" And I said, you know, and I had to walk up to somebody and said, "Well, then you need FileMaker." And I had to get the box. I think it was FileMaker 11 or something like that. I had to get the box for that to get something separate. So it's, again. So again, this is going to be a good intro to FileMaker.
Yeah. Do they sell FileMaker? Can you buy FileMaker in an Apple Store?
Yeah, I've seen it on the shelf there.
Really?
Box copy. You know, I don't know if they give you a box or not, but they have a box there at least.
They do have a box.
Yeah.
So you can
Is
just
it
say, I want
16?
this.
Is it 16 or 15?
I haven't been to the
Okay.
store since 16 launch, but
That's
they had
cool.
15 there.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So they can see a demo. They can say, "How do I get it?" Right there.
Right. Yeah.
Because they also had the Ideas to iPads program, which they were selling in the Apple Store too, which was 10 hours. You know, you buy an iPad, you buy FileMaker, and you get 10 hours of consulting time with this bundle.
We did 2 of those. You don't make any money off of it. FileMaker pays you, I think, $350 for your 10 hours of time. So
Quite generous.
yeah, so you know, we get to make $35 an hour basically for 10 hours of time, with the idea that hopefully this turns into a big project. And of the 2 projects that we did, the first one was for a school, and they took forever to review the thing. I did both of them. That was kind of fun for me because I don't remember working on everything else. So I did both projects. And the first one, we sent it to them, and it took them like 3 months to just review what I did because she was on vacation and all this stuff happened. And then by the time she reviewed it, she said, "Well, it took too long. They're not interested in FileMaker anymore." I got this to you like a week after. So
Not your fault.
that was disappointing. And then we had another one. It was for a medical device manufacturer, and they wanted to manage like brochures and PDFs, so we did some container fields and stuff. And they were very happy, and they gave me great reviews, and they loved it, and they're using it, and they haven't called us for anything. So, you know, that hasn't really been a gold mine for us. But I feel like, you know, it seems like it has potential. I'm kind of surprised that there's only been, you know, 2 of them.
We had one from a different company that someone had done the Ideas to iPads and then did the 10 hours, and then they came to us and they're like, "Well, we worked with them and we want to try someone else."
Okay.
So it wasn't you guys, but and so that turned into a good sized project after that.
That's great.
But yeah, I imagine sometimes it hasn't
Yeah. It's
taken
kind
off
of,
as much.
yeah. I enjoy doing it. You know, it was fun for me because I don't really do a lot of client development anymore. by definition, I'm limited to 10 hours, so I'm not gonna get sucked in.
Yeah.
So you got a little hourglass, and when it runs out, you're done.
Yeah, yeah.
I think they just close the store. You have to go home.
Or
What's that?
They just close the store and you have to go home.
Oh, yeah.
So Michael, do you have there were some interesting sessions that you went to, do you think, that you want to tell us a little bit about?
I can, unless Jess wants to do a demo first.
Are we going to 8 tonight? It's, we won't take any demo of this.
Right. What kind of connector?
Everything.
See?
Do you have, let me just,
We can't find an HDMI cable.
that's okay. I'm gonna text David, and what's the easiest way? Do you guys go to the community document? Like where all the sessions are, like the session materials?
For DevCon?
Yeah.
Oh, no, what's the link for that? I don't know.
Well, I can,
Do you have pepperoni left there, Tony?
one. What's the
Oh, is this it here?
are you on the guest network?
Yeah. Is this the right thing here?
No. Communities,
Training day session materials?
yeah. So that page is gonna be a resource. They're gonna have videos for all the ones that are saying videos coming soon.
Mm-hmm. And I think they're trying to do them a lot faster this year than they did last year, too.
Yeah, I think they're trying to get like 8 or so up with, like, if not this week, next week.
Mhm.
I don't know which ones they're prioritizing. I went to mainly the business ones, which I think had its own track. Yeah, business. So I went to
You went to that how to train a junior developer, right?
Yeah, had to train a junior developer. That was Molly's. The Cultivating Project Champions was good. Increasing code quality while staying lean, that was John Sindelar's, and also really, really good.
You want to talk a little bit about what they were talking about?
Yeah, so Molly's went through, and if you can click on view the materials, and it'll show the overview of what you saw before you can get in there. And then at the bottom, they have the keynotes. Some have keynotes.
Do you want to come over here and you can click around this?
No.
Sorry.
I'm actually going to pull up my notes for it. So Molly's was talking about how to train a junior developer, and a lot of it was, that's a really good idea. I don't know why I didn't think about that. A lot of it is setting expectations. A lot of it is setting good habits, just in the sense of teach them to track their time. It doesn't matter like what they're doing. Like if you spend 2 hours like reading this documentation or doing the data model, write that down. One of the other things was at the end of the day, write down, let me get it right, what you did, what did I accomplish, how long did it take, what assistance do I need, and the goals for tomorrow. Yeah, when you hire them, she says to set like expectations. Like 3 months from now, we'll set like we're gonna have a review and see if this is working out for both of us. Because if you're not happy, then we're either gonna change it or you'll go do something else. If I'm not happy, also I'm gonna change it or you're gonna do something else. 6 to 12 months for them to get certified in this version of FileMaker, and then within 3 months, and I don't know if this 3 months of being certified or not, up to like 24 hours of billable work that they're accomplishing. Now, granted, that is largely on the person assigning the junior developer work. And so a lot of it was, what can I delegate? She has something called Jumpstart FM, which I believe is an online training tool that you can sign up your junior developers for. 4 weeks, 12 classes.
And it's $2,250.
Yeah.
It includes coffee.
Oh, thank you.
I don't think it does, actually. It's all remote.
Well, it includes the coffee you bring. If you have coffee at your desk, you're welcome to drink it.
That she tried to help with in the class, and they weren't currently working for a FileMaker company, then she has some program that she's working on to try to network with companies that are looking for FileMaker people. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I could dig in my savings and get $2,000.
Yeah.
It certainly would be, if you're thinking about it, I mean, Molly's super approachable. She's really, really happy to talk about this stuff. Just give her a call if you're thinking about it.
I'm tracking. Go on.
Is this one on your FileMaker training series for the longest time? They discontinued that.
Well, kind of. They still have a resource. They're switching towards the video series now.
When did it come?
What? No, if you go to, can you pull up FileMaker? If you go to learn, certification. So study the preparation exam.
This is just one little PDF thing.
Yeah, that's all it is.
It's not that little.
Oh, 24 pages.
Right, but it's got links to all the stuff that you might need. And maybe the other thing was Indiana. I'm not going to repeat myself. But
No, that wasn't India.
the video stuff,
That was not India.
they're switching to, I know they're doing a whole bunch of training videos for this sort of thing.
In-house, like, no,
It's fine too.
I know, but it's kind of being paid for and hosted by
Yeah,
FileMaker.
yeah.
It's not basically just go to this third party.
Right, FileMaker's going to own the content.
When will they have this available?
That I don't know.
When
For
will
some
it-
reason, I thought it was already up.
They talked about it quite a bit, and I haven't been able to find serious in-depth sort of documentation.
So stay tuned.
Yep. I think it's not quite there yet.
So that was really good. John, let me switch over to John Sindelaris. Can you go back to the page?
And the certification test is out now for 16.
To go to increasing code quality while staying lean. And so he started saying, we're not, if you came here to like learn cool tricks, this is not the session. But he basically went through what he does and what they do. With their this was largely for their client work and not their main product, or their product work. The seed code does. They have the dayback calendar. They have the dayback calendar FileMaker solution. They also have a dayback calendar online, and then they have a dayback calendar online that integrates with Salesforce. The two online. And so it's much easier to push an update to the online part because there's no like requirement, like to replace FileMaker database is a lot more work than to just push a server update to something that you control. He described that demoing things is the new testing, and anytime he called it shipping a feature. So anytime he does any client work and they say, hey, can you like make it so we can do this feature now? They'll do it, and then instead of writing a note saying, hey, it's done, or just waiting for the client to find it, they there's a couple software that they use, and they basically like start recording it and do a demo. And just the act of doing that, they catch tons of things that they forgot. So like, all right, so you come up with this layout, you press this button, and then you stop timing, and then you like fix it. So by the time you actually get the demo done, it should work right.
So it's like preserving the project in video.
And that is a bonus of it also, because you can at some point what they do is then they upload it to some cloud service, send a link, and you can always then say, look, we're creating more fine, but massive to do.
I've got a Camtasia is what I use for
What do you
screen
use?
sharing. Camtasia?
So they're not doing screen sharing.
Or not screen sharing, filming, recording the screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's using
That's it.
Monosnap, and these might just be Mac apps. Monosnap, which is having trouble on the App Store at the moment, and Screencast-O-Matic.
I use ScreenFlow Pro, which is not.
Yeah,
Do they
I use
have-
that one too.
These two have like their own kind of like cloud service.
I see. So it's not just recording, it's recording and sharing. basically.
Right. Like ScreenFlow Pro it'll allow you to push it up to a lot of different sharing sites. It's not necessarily, I haven't thought about it long enough to like make sure that only the client can see their stuff.
Mhm.
But he says it's 3 to 5 minutes. You remind them that, like you said, you remind them that, hey, it worked and we delivered it. He described it. He's like, it's not formal. You're not really trying to sell anyone anything. It's like someone was sitting next to you, just like, hey, look at this thing that I did. It's like showing a friend. Open questions, he said, go in the email to the client. You can close with suggestions and next steps, because the follow-up work is always fun. And he talked about chunking and breaking down your work into smaller and smaller cases, because you want to be able to deliver things to the client. You always want to feel like you are steadily moving the project forward. If it's a 30-hour project, they want to hear from you. They don't want you to go radio silent and not show them anything for 3 or 4 weeks. So if you can break something down into a 30-hour project into like 15 or 2-hour projects, that's awesome. If you can break them down to 31-hour projects, even better.
Probably the clients to get 30 years.
That's up to you and the client. But the point being is,
No, I agree with that. I mean,
Just to,
people
like-
like it. If they want ask you to do something and you send them an email after and say, hey, that feature's in place.
right.
People
even
are
if
happy
you-
about that.
And even if you can't like finish the whole feature, something that is usable, and then the follow-up is, and the next thing we'll do, the next thing that we'll ship is this last part that will, I don't know, send the email back
And-
or
Talk to them about what the priorities are, what you want to see in the first 2 iterations or 3 iterations, and get those out first.
right. And that's the discussion beforehand anyway. It's
Right.
here's the priorities and here's what we're going to do first. They talked about documenting decisions. So it's like have an issue tracking system. And when you make a script or a change, put that issue tracking number as a comment in your FileMaker script, just so that you can then know that this is why we made this change.
Do they have any requirement, FileMaker requirement systems and FileMaker issues tracking systems out there? You know, what,
We use one called UTrack.
okay,
You mean built in FileMaker?
built-in FileMaker.
It's not built in FileMaker. We're using. It
There's
seems like FileMaker would be a good tool for that kind of thing.
Yeah. You know, because again, you know, I'm just beginning to read materials on requirements gathering, and especially if you're updating and adding requirements and stuff like that, how do you do that?
One problem I've always had, because we don't do a lot of in-house FileMaker tools that much anymore. We do some, but we don't really have that many kind of like 360 Works FileMaker system for doing such and such. A lot of our stuff is stuff that we built web-based. One of the problems that I've had with FileMaker tools to kind of be part of our development process is that you're working in FileMaker and you're trying to also use FileMaker for this other thing. And if you're in field definitions or you've got a little dialogue or you're having to quit it and start it to test different plugins or whatever, it can be really hard to be switching over to some other system to update the status of what you're doing in it or something like that.
Okay.
And then every time that you quit FileMaker because you need to reinstall something, you're closing your tracking tool. And so that's always just kind of been a little, sometimes we've saw, in the old days when I used to do that more, I saw that I had like 2 copies of FileMaker installed. and I would have one copy for my internal tool and then one copy for whatever I was doing for the client. But now it seems like a lot of our stuff has either is more web-based, either so that we built ourselves or third-party stuff, and that's nice because you get a tab in the browser.
Right.
And Safari lets you like pin tabs, which I like a lot. So like our time tracking system, which I use constantly, like every 10 minutes or so in the office. I see you, Joe. I just have that pinned to a tab, so I can never actually close that. Like it's always there on the left corner, so I just click and change what I'm doing and I click backwards. With FileMaker, I don't think I would use the issue tracking that much because I would have to keep, I need to open FileMaker back up and open that thing and change the issue.
Yeah, take the tab and drag it all over the left.
I am using that too.
You just
That is
right
also
click
good.
I use a separate program for like time tracking. I use Toggle for that. That's pretty.
Yeah, put U-track in there and put job tracker in there.
Why couldn't it separate? Like, I use Fluid and it's just like single.
That's a little single purpose application that works too.
Because then
I've used that before too. That's a cool
switch back and
program.
forth to pinning. That's nice.
The pins stick across windows too.
Never know which order.
Very weird. I still remember what was I demoing?
I kept seeing it demo. I was like, how do you get
But I
that?
showed how to like omit all the records in the found set.
And people went
You
crazy.
know, like show or to isolate certain records in the found set. Show all, omit, show omitted. People are like, that's so cool. I'm like, it's irrelevant. After the meeting, they're like, that found set trick's really new.
And then real quick, it's he talks about reporting technical debt, which is keeping track of the stuff that's not done, documenting like if you do it like this, it will break. He had an example where like the if this dialogue came up, there was like something that it was just quicker for you to call the office and just have one of the developers like do whatever it was than it would be to like figure out the right way to fix it. And they had a good enough and long-standing enough and continuous relationship with the client where it's just call, I forget who the developer was, but like just call John and like he'll reset this thing or whatever it was. Those that's one of the ones that I would definitely watch again. So when that video,
And I think that was a recorded, right?
yeah, so they'll all eventually get there.
Who are the recordings available to? Do you need to have attended DevCon?
I think if you have access to this, you're gonna have access to it.
Okay.
So anybody,
They just posted them all up on YouTube last year,
Yeah, I think that's what they're gonna do. This
Okay. Okay.
including the keynote.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was surprised about that.
last year or this year.
Last year's keynote is up there.
Well, you know what? The keynote they talk about roadmap stuff, and so it's. I mean, they hedge it with like, here's the stuff that we're not promising that like.
Did you guys see, Rick Kalman did a roadmap webinar video, like a few months ago.
Yeah.
And it was public and it was posted on Facebook. And they're like, we want anybody who wants to come and get a look at future features and stuff. I thought that was pretty neat because they talk about that stuff sometimes, but it's always very hush-hush. You know, it's like, they'll talk about certain stuff at the keynote and then certain stuff, such as like FDA Platinum people, and then certain stuff, only like 8 people that came to this private meeting in California or something like that. I think it's a really good move for them to start moving in the direction of we're going to do these public things we're talking about. Here's what we might see next in FileMaker.
That might have to do with their business change of moving to the annual thing too, because they want you to see the value in having a
Yeah.
subscription.
They're less concerned about the timing of when you choose to buy it, more concerned about just showing that there's cool stuff coming.
I think they're also giving deferential treatment to like people attending the conference and FBA as opposed to like they'll get these videos out, but they're not in a super. There's still value to going to DevCon, even if like they just live stream the thing. I think there's still value to going.
just a sheer act of meeting all these people and doing networking.
There's that, yeah, and then it's like asking the follow-up questions and verifying. Like, I was running this thing in my head, and I just want to make sure like what you're saying is actually validating the thing that I thought was right or wrong.
Just clarifying questions.
Yeah, like the whole just keep breaking things down into smaller things. It's not so much breaking them down into smaller dependencies, but you can break this down into a smaller thing that works.
And break it down into smaller things that can be modular, that you can reuse.
It wasn't so much modular. It was, it doesn't have to do all the things, it can do some of the things and still work. Like, you know, it sends an email now. It's, or you don't have any like styling set up on it, but you can select a contact, push this button, and it will send out this form letter. We haven't implemented any of the CSS yet. That's the thing that we'll do next. So that kind of thing.
I have a quick question. Is there a version compare feature of either tool out there that you have this version of this file, this version of this file, you compare them to find out what the difference is?
Why would you be doing that?
Or like say, for example, you have a file that's in production and you pull it down and you tweak it for another iteration. So you should be able to find out what you need to change in the production file.
So you can like take all your development changes and merge them into production.
Yeah.
Is that something that I should talk about?
That's the right answer.
What?
Great segue.
Is that what you're going to talk about?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I really did not talk to Tom about this.
No, I had no idea.
Well, I can send you a link so you can be we can broadcast it straight from your computer then too.
Okay.
Let me pull that up on here and I'll stop screen sharing for a second so we don't fall into the void. Let's see here. There's
I'll be expecting my check in the mail tomorrow.
Just you're demoing the deploy, right?
I'm going to demo 364 and Nursing 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna head out.
Sounds good.
See you guys.
something here. All right.
Yeah, I think most of the 360 people have seen this demo at least twice. So you guys are welcome to stay or go, whatever you feel like.
Okay, you should have the link in your email. That'll get you joined as a presenter on here.
All right. So I just install the plugin.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to connect to the projector, or we're going to see it up here.
Yeah, I'll connect the projector.
I never knew. It's the little.
I just installed the plugin. It's telling me to install a plugin. Should I install it?
Click the link again. Did you click the link and it took you?
This, yeah.
Hit the bottom maybe. I don't know. You just installed it. Third time's the charm.
Closdown.com. How many times did you restart it?
Yeah.
3, just like you always said.
Mm-hmm.
This is all very familiar. Okay, so you guys all saw me install it.
Yeah.
I'm quitting. Do I need to open it in Safari? Is that, or in Chrome? Is that the issue?
No, looks like it's going down. I don't know. All right, try it. Try it in Chrome, maybe. Other browsers too, but.
There you go.
Okay, so I muted myself. I will have set this to you to present to everyone.
Okay.
And so you're presenting now, and you can use the icon. Your screen's not being shown. So click on the little green icon on the left side, right there. Yep, screen share, and now you can choose if you want to do whole desktop or a particular window.
Now you're going into Infinity.
Yeah. So we go in. So you happen to also be looking at your screen. So like you can click on me and then it won't. Yeah. Now share your screen and it won't show your screen. There you go. Share. Okay. So I will set this now. Present to everyone. All right. Should be good.
All right. So I did a DevCon session on Nursing 4 and 360 Deploy. I'm going to do Nursing 4 first because it's a really short demo and there's not that much to talk about. And I've just got a video that I recorded. So it's like 2.5 minutes. I'll just talk through what's happening on the video. The session itself was great because I've never had a room that was like packed. A lot of people came to the session. We filled the room, then we added more chairs, then people started sitting on the floor. And then the hotel people told us we couldn't allow anyone else into the room. So I've never had that happen in one of my DevCon sessions. So I was very, very happy about that. Would have been even happier to be able to have everyone in the room, but still. So this is Nursing 4. This is a quick demo that I was recording. Is it playing right now? I can't really tell.
Yeah, it's playing.
Okay, so basically there's kind of one cool new feature in Nursing 4. And the idea is that now with Nursing 4, you've got your offline users and they can, you've got your offline users and they have their offline copies of the file and they can create new records and edit and delete records and they sync and all that changes up to the server and all this stuff comes down to the server. But what happens if you make programming changes on the server? Added some new tables or fields or layouts or scripts or whatever, and you can continue to sync with your users and they'll get your new record changes, but they're not going to get the new programming changes. So that's what's new in Nursing 4. So I'm going to kind of skip ahead here and see if I can figure out where the interesting stuff starts to happen. I think something's, I don't think I can, maybe I can't do QuickTime Player when I'm using the Google Hangouts thing. Because I think my screen is changing at some point during this 8-minute video.
Because I'm not hearing any audio.
No, I don't need the audio. I was going to talk over it. All right. Well, I can't actually show the video.
You try closing it and reopening and see if it opens it? Yeah, that's weird.
Get the screen.
There we go. Okay, so what I've done here is I've got my development file on the left. This is my server file. We're going to pretend that this is my offline user out in the field somewhere. So I'm making some changes. I changed my layout theme on my development file on my hosted database, so my clients don't have that. I'm just going to skip ahead here a little bit. I did want to point out that if you change tables or fields, you need to run through the MirrorSync configuration. You still need to repaste the script step at the end. If you don't change tables or fields, you don't need to do that. But MirrorSync needs to know all of your tables and fields. So if you change the tables and fields, you edit the configuration, and you pretty much just hit next, okay, on every screen that comes up. And when you get to the end, MirrorSync will have now detected all of your new fields, your new tables and stuff, and then you repaste your script steps, and then at that point you're ready to distribute this file to your offline users. So I'm going to speed it up a little bit. I go ahead and copy all those script steps. And so now what I want to show here, let me back up a tiny bit. There's a little, it's hard to find my spot. There's a little bit of a lag. Okay, so what I want to show here is that I'm now going into the MirrorSync table, and there's a new field that we've added here called database version. And so that wasn't there in MirrorSync 3, it's there in MirrorSync 4. You can set it to whatever you want. And anytime that it changes, it'll prompt the offline user for a new version. So I'm going to change the database version here. I'm changing it, I think I did from like 3.1 to 3.2. I was talking while I recorded this, so that's why I'm going so slowly. Again, I'm going to speed this up a little bit. Is there like a play faster? Here we go, playback speed. Speed this up a little bit. So now I run my sync. The sync is not going to have any changes. But when it's all done, and I hit OK, come on, Jesse, hit OK. Stop talking and hit the button. All right, here's the interesting part. Jesse, shut up. So you saw I changed that version in the MirrorSync table to 3.2. MirrorSync on the offline clients will now automatically detect that. It'll see that there's a new version. It'll prompt the user, ask them if they want to update. It'll pull that version and ask them, do you want this version? They can hit not yet, for instance, if they're on a low speed connection, or if they're not sure if it's ready or anything like that, or they're just in a hurry, they can hit not yet. But if you hit OK, then it's going to automatically download a new copy of the database right here. It'll replace your old file, and that's it. And you just open it back up, and now you get a new, fresh, unsynced file. You are running an initial sync at this point now, because it's a new copy of the file from the server.
Nice.
And push your changes up before.
Right, right. We'll only prompt the user for this after a successful sync. So that way we know all of their offline changes have been pushed up to the server, and it's okay to just throw away their old file, get a new copy from the server.
Does it archive the old file?
Nope.
With a copy or anything after, just writes over it?
Just overwrites it, which I found is better. We've had a lot of tech support calls from people who, I've got 37 copies of my database that I downloaded over time, and I'm opening, and I found out that my users are opening the one from a year and a half ago. So it really is, once we know that data's been synced, it's really better just to overwrite it. A really hard thing that we did on this that I think is really cool is that there are no additional files required for this to work. So, if you've used GoSync or EasySync, or if you try to build your own kind of updater tool, usually you do that by having a separate file that you install on the iPad along with whatever your solution file is. But in this case, we do kind of some black magic to pull that into a container field in FileMaker, temporarily export that, use some on-timer and on-close triggers to pop open that temporary file, which then overwrites the file that it kind of came from, and then opens that file back up. So it's kind of this little jig that it's doing to switch back and forth. But the nice thing is, from your user standpoint, if you have a single file solution, you give them that one file, and then this update process will work, even though behind the scenes we do create a temporary second file just to make it look like this is all a seamless thing.
Now, what if they have on like a data separation?
So with data separation, it'll work. It will work, but iOS can't handle multi-file downloads. That's not a MirrorSync limitation. It's not really even a FileMaker limitation. It's just iOS. Mm-hmm. So if you have multiple files, you would need to manually send your files to your users because they would need to be zipped or something like that. And so this is really most relevant with a single file solution.
That sounds like a case where you would create an iOS specific file that consolidate some of those tables.
Yeah, where you basically kind of build your own little updater that can download all the separate files that you need and then unpacks them.
Or just make it a single file solution that does hit, like if you're talking about it just has separate files for separate tables, you're using separation model for UI and data. The separation model doesn't really work that well on FileMaker.
But the separation model should die a slow, painful death.
Jesse, tell us how you really feel.
And let me show you why. So this brings me to our second tool, which will render the separation model irrelevant, hopefully, because it's a monstrosity, I think. So what I've got here is now I'm going to talk about 360 deploy, and and it's this is to solve the exact problem that you're talking about. Basically, it's sort of related to what I just showed in nursing, but I'm not showing now a hosted file with an offline copy. Now what I'm really talking about is I've got some deployed solution running on a client's database somewhere that's live, that has thousands of records in it, and then I've got a development copy of that database either on my own laptop or on a development server. And actually, I haven't tested it yet, but I think that we'll even be able to make it work so that you could put the development files on the same server as your deployment files if you wanted to. That might not be a good idea, but I think we can support that. So you've got you've got your development copy, you've got your deployed copy. This has been a problem since forever. I mean, I started using FileMaker in '92, and I remember having 8 installations of my first ad agency management database on 8 different servers, and staying up all night long, setting alarm clocks so I could sleep for 15 minutes at a time while tables imported, to save empty clones of my database and import, from 42 different tables into, and at the time it was 42 different files because this is all pre-7,
I remember starting with you and having to go through each one and making the same changes in each file. I don't remember what change it was, but there were a lot of them.
So it was eight deployed installations, 40 files per installation. So it was 320 import operations that I would need to do overnight. And for each one, there was also serial numbers because we didn't have UUIDs in those days. And even if you have UUIDs, you probably still have serial numbers on your work order numbers, or your adrec numbers, or your check numbers, or PM numbers, or whatever. And so 320 imports across these 8 different databases, a whole lot of Timbuktuing, and trying to keep track of which serial numbers from the old production database needed to be set in this thing. And that, once FileMaker 7 came along, then we had this sort of half-ass compromise way to solve the problem, which is the separation model, so that you have your data file, which you do your best to not really do anything useful to, and then you have your right? Am I right? Don't do anything useful in the data model because you just do it once. And then you have your interface file where you do all the useful stuff. But if you want to store calculation or something like that, then you're pretty much kind of back to square one, where you're making the same changes in multiple copies of the database, or you're importing into an empty clone. So 360 deploy, I think, solves this problem pretty well. And really what it does is it does the same thing I did a long time ago. It just does it all automatically. It does it really, really easily. And so there's not a lot of magic going on. It's essentially just automatically saving an empty clone of your development copies, whether they're in your development laptop or development server, pushing those empty clones up to the deployment server, closing, reopening, and then pausing the production files so that the users are all kind of kicked out, and then when it's reopened, it's in a pause state, so that they, at least they try to reconnect, they can, but it's read-only when it's paused. Automating the import process from the old production database into the new empty clone. And then after that finishes, doing a bunch of file manipulation of moving the old version. And you asked before about archiving. We do archive in this case because this is different. This is like a production server database. We really don't want to just throw the old one away. So we archive and timestamp the old version. We rename the newly imported version to match whatever the old name was. We open the newly imported one, and then it's all done. And it all happens with like one button press, pretty much.
Where do you archive it to?
We archive it in the documents directory in the FileMaker server. And that's important to know about, because if your database is big, then every time you run this, you're going to get an archived copy, and you could run out of disk space. The nice thing is if anything goes wrong, for instance, if you find out that you made a programming mistake, then there's a ready-to-go version in a timestamp folder, and all you need to do is just close the version that's on there, put back the old version with all the structure and the data, and open it back up. So it's really easy to roll back.
If there's been any updates to the data between the time you've...
Hopefully you would catch the problem,
right,
you know, shortly after you bring it live. If you didn't catch the problem, an interesting thing that you could do is you could just use 360 deploy again to basically take the old production database that was okay and redeploy it with the new data that's been entered.
It's basically almost like a restore.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I've got here is I've got these two databases. I've got my development version on the left, which is called inventory. And this is a local file, not on server. It could be on a development server, but I'm just doing it, you know, just in single user files on my laptop. And then I've got the version on the right, which is my production version, and this is on FileMaker server. This is also on my laptop, but these could be on two different machines or whatever we want. And so I've got 9 records on the right, and I've got, it's got electrolytes. I've got a good one here.
Wow.
What
Wow.
plants crave.
Oh, wow.
And on my left, this is my test database that only has 3 records in it. And so notice that also on the left, my I've done a bunch of stuff on this. I don't know if my I'm going to just change these values here to 100 and 1,000, because one common problem that you run into when you're importing into clones is if you forget to manually change all the serial numbers in your tables to match what they were in your production databases, then you're either going to get a huge gap if you're lucky, or if your serial numbers are behind what was in your production database, you're going to wind up with duplicate IDs, which is obviously much worse. So one of the things that 360 deploy will do is it'll read all your serial numbers from your production database, store them, and after it puts in the empty clone, it'll set all the serial numbers to match whatever the next version was in your production database. So I've got this 360 deploy file, and I don't need my production database open right now. I've got my 360 deploy file, and these are the steps that you do. So the first thing that we recommend that you do is, and this is optional, but you should create a username and password in this 360 deploy file that matches some username and password that you're going to use for the import process in your solution, because that will skip all the prompts. If you didn't do that, the import would work, but you'd have to put in your password a bunch of times. The second thing is you tell us where are your development files. They can either be in a particular directory on your hard drive, or they can be on a server somewhere. In my case, they're just in this TMP folder. I can click verify. Oh, this is funny. We don't have this for sale yet, so I don't have a legal copy. So let me quickly quit out of FileMaker and relaunch this, because it runs for 2 hours every time I launch FileMaker. At least I know that our copy protection works. So I really need to come up with a license key here. So I can verify that my path is entered correctly, and so it's able to see all the databases. My production database, my production database is here. I'm running this on localhost. I'm just doing this in development mode right now, so it's actually running in my Java IDE right here. But if this is a real deployment, we have a double clickable installer that you just install on your production database, and if necessary, if relevant, your development server. So your production server, and if there is one, your development server, you would run this installer on both. And I can click verify and make sure that that tool is correctly installed on my deployment server, which it is. I can pick which databases I want to deploy. I just recently got multi-file solutions working. I should point out this isn't for sale yet. We're going to be doing beta testing. We're going to start beta testing either tomorrow or Friday. hopefully we're going to have this for sale sometime in August.
End of August?
Probably end of August, yeah. So I'm still working on it. I just added multi-file support. And also, as you can see here, you can change this is the name of the production files. These are the names of the deployed files. You can rename the deployed files. So if you're changing names between like a dev version and a deployed version, we support that.
Let's see, what's the other column there?
This one here?
Yeah.
This is just to remove stuff.
Okay.
So if I also had this email test database, and so if I've got a 4-file, well, this makes sense. If I have 4 files in my solution, I just add them all here, and then I can just click the X there to remove them. So those are my files. Since I have a multi-file solution, I need to designate a primary database that has table occurrences that relate to the other databases. So that's my inventory database. My next step, I'm gonna remove my previous kind of testing stuff, so I can just kind of do this from scratch. So I'm opening up my development inventory database. The only change that I make to this is adding the script folder. I'm going to delete the script folder so you can watch me add it back in, but that's actually the only change that we make at all to your solution file. We don't add any new tables, there's no new fields, we just paste in a script folder. So that's the step right here. Copy the script folder, you put it on the clipboard, we tell you to paste it into the files. You need to paste it into both files, but you can use your imagination. I pretend that I pasted it into both. So I paste in this folder. It's got 3 scripts in it. The first one is a totally generic script that just knows how to get a list of all the tables and fields. We'll use that in a second to find out the structures database. The next one is where our actual import script will go when it's done. It's not ready yet, so this is empty at the moment. And then the third one, 360 deploy post import actions. This is something that you can customize yourself so that after updating to a new version of your database, you can run data cleanup things like maybe splitting first name and last name fields out, or combining things, or assigning default values to a new field.
So this would be a conversion script.
Yeah.
I assume you can, because you could set something in, because this is the new file, you can set the version in it somewhere, and then create some branching. If this version is greater than or less than this, do these things. If it's less than this, do these things.
Exactly. At the top, so you can optionally add a field, name it anything you want in your solution. In this case, _C version number is what I named it. So this is version 2. And then you can tell us in the advanced options the name of that field.
That's cool.
And if you tell us the name of the field, we'll pass in a 2 when we call the script. And then you'll know that the version you're importing from was version 2.
Like in those card windows.
Yeah, you noticed the card windows.
How do you do that? Oh, it's a card window.
That's me, super graphic designer. That's my nickname. I'm sitting next to Michael when I say that, which makes that even funnier. So we've copied that script folder in. Now the exciting part right here. Okay, we just wrote the actual import script, and we paste that in. This is my data file, so I'm not gonna. I would paste it into both, but I already have it in my data file, so I'm just gonna open my inventory file, and I'm gonna go to that empty script that I had, and I'm gonna paste in everything that just got put on the clipboard. So this is the import script right here. You can see, like for instance, right here is an import record script step. So this is where the actual imports happen. And you can also see that here's our names of our databases and tables. So clearly this script is customized based on all that stuff that we collected in the last step with that. You know, we got the names of our tables and fields here, and we used those to build this script right here. Yes. That's it, we're ready to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually make a development change here. I've got this little chart off to the side.
So you only need to set up that one so that you can just make.
If you added new fields or tables to your solution, the only thing you would need to do is rerun this step 6 here, copy the script steps.
Okay, but any layout changes, you don't need to.
Right.
Just schema level stuff.
Right, we'll go ahead and do that right after it. So just to compare, I'm not going to have this open when I actually run this, but just to compare, I'm going to open my server file. And notice a few differences here. For one, this has 3 records, and this has 9. For another thing, this has a chart on it. This one doesn't. And for another thing, this one has the next primary key field is 1,000. And on this one, the next primary key field is 11. So now I'm going to close these files, and I'm going to actually just go ahead and run the import here. Oh, there's a schedule option, which I just added last night. So it's 8:27 and 12. I could just run it immediately, or I can say run it at 8:27 and 30 seconds. So I click OK, and it says will install at 8:27 and 30 seconds, 5 seconds, 4 seconds remaining. You must leave this database open. So you could set this to run at 2 in the morning or whatever. It'll now kick in. It's going to save empty clones of my development files, push them up to my production server, import all the data into those empty clones, close the old files, move them aside with a timestamp, rename the clones, and open them back up in place of the old ones. It's done. It took 21 seconds.
Cool.
And so now I open up my production inventory database. Notice I still have my 9 records, but now I have my chart, which I didn't have before. And my serial number is still 11, like it should be. And that's it.
How would you, so now technically, on this, so what does your local file have?
How many records does that have?
It's got 9 records.
Okay.
So this is doing an import. If I had 1 million records, this would take a few hours.
Okay.
So it's not magically.
I thought your table had 11 records, or 10 records.
My production database had 9 records. My next serial number was 11 because I've created and deleted a few records. But yeah, my original production database had 9.
What are your serial numbers now? Back to what the production was.
So my next serial number was 11 before, and it should still be 11. So yeah, even though on my empty clone that I imported to was 1,000 because I changed that during the process.
One of the things that, going back to John's, which does tails into this, was always test and demo with your client's data. So how would you, I guess presuming if the feature is on the client server anyway, I guess that's a deployment.
It'd be kind of interesting to make it so that we didn't necessarily get rid of the old version. Like we could do it where we could go ahead and put it up on the server, import all the data, but then leave the old version on there. And then we could say, hey, your file's still on there, but take a look. There's another one named dev that has your data and the features we just added.
Is there a way to, like, because the file can get.
Okay, I'll say real quick, that would be really useful. I've got a client who would love that sort of thing.
The big question I have with this process is, say for example, I have 15 clients with that I want to push up the same database to. You have to input that same script step in all the files prior to you.
No, the only changes that I made were to my development copy. I didn't have to make any, those script folders that I added, I didn't add them on the production side.
Oh, okay.
I only added them on the development side. There is one thing I did have to do on the production side, which I had to install that application, but that's like a 15-second install. So I would need to do that on each server, but only one time. And then I don't need to redo that process again.
You don't need to copy any of the scripts to the production file or the other one.
Right.
Do those others version scripts, they don't even have to be on the production.
That's right. What we'll do is that if there is no version field on the production database, we'll call that post import script right here, this post import action, and we'll pass in a 0 as the production version. And when you get a 0, that's kind of your way of knowing, okay, this is a file that has never been imported using 360 deploy, and so I know that.
So it's an initial version.
This is the initial version, and then you can check for that. And I give an example here. If production version, so my example here is if I wanted to split out a full name field into a first name and last name. 0, my in-use version right now has a name field, and I want to split it out. So I would say if my production version is less than or equal to 1, go to the contact layout. I don't actually have one.
You can put a ton of subscripts in there.
Yeah, I can do anything I want. I can also display a GUI if I want. I could show a dialogue and ask the user to enter an input if I'm sitting here watching this process happen. But I could grab, the left words of the name and put it in the first name field and the right words and stick it in the right, the last name field. And then I can have additional things to say, if it's less than a version 2, then do these other things. If it's less than or equal to version 3, do these other things. And that way I could deploy to somebody who had version 0, that had never been imported before, or someone with version 1 or 2 or 3, and then now I can take my version 4 and I can deploy the exact same version to all of those customers, and it'll do the right steps depending on what version they're currently on to bring them up to version 4.
Can you, if I were to if I wanted to have like development, staging, production, could I like create 2 records and go from like development to staging, and then the second record go from like staging to production?
Yeah, definitely. So here, we're hiding the toolbar, but you can show the toolbar and you can have as many different configurations as you want. I mean, we need to figure out the licensing. From a pricing standpoint, we know we're going to price it at $195 to deploy one particular solution to one particular server.
One solution to one server.
I don't know the pricing. We haven't set the pricing yet for multiple solutions to one server, or one particular server to one particular solution to multiple servers. But assuming that the licensing part is done, then yes, technically you can create as many configurations as you want and have a deploy to staging, deploy to production, kind of thing. Another thing is that this file is going to ship unlocked, which means that you can create. I had a simple little example here, but you can make your own layout and you could give this to your client, and your client could actually even run the update themselves.
Latest version. You could technically do it. Is there a way you could get so from like a vertical market, you've got an empty clone there, which is the new file.
Yeah. What I would do is I would take my development versions, put them on a publicly accessible server like an Amazon server.
Right.
I would put that as my development server, and then I would put my deployment server as localhost, which means that it's going to deploy into whatever box they're running it on.
Say that again. What's local to the client is the production?
The production server would be localhost.
Okay.
They would open this file using FileMaker client on their server. I would change the startup script to come straight to this layout. Maybe I'd make it a little prettier, but then one button, and I'd say, here, I've sent you this updater file. Open this on your server, click the one button. It's going to go and get a clone from
perform script on server.
And hopefully that would reduce the number of calls. Should
I click the button?
What that makes it easy. Back in the mainframe days, you had user acceptance testing, and then you said, okay, you did get a sign off from everybody saying it works, and then somebody had to push the button and say, yeah, it's going live.
Well, what you do is you do a perform on server, and part of it sets up this like Node.js server that like lets everyone in the database know that it's about to get updated and they're going to shut you down.
There you go.
Does this keep a log afterwards of all the IPs or machines that were updated, or if somebody was offline and they needed to be updated, or to keep track of who hasn't been updated? Or
there is a log here of all the steps that happened.
That's 2 separate things. One, this is more this
server.
But this is hosted.
Yeah.
But you could, since it would be an unlocked thing, you could modify it so after they run the update, it posts data to your own server where you're going to track and record that they've performed the update. So you can have your client records and say, check off which ones have done the update on.
Because mirror sync could still, because you could update a system that has mirror sync in it also, which would then let the client know that there's an updated version.
Oh, if we're combining 360 deploy and mirror sync, I see what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah. So this was, I don't think we've ever had as much interest in any product as we had this year at DevCon. I mean, like, normally at DevCon, there's a big crowd at our booth the first night. And then after that, it's kind of like, I'll usually be talking to like 1 or 2 people in a break between sessions. And then it's kind of quiet during the session. And this year, I had like anywhere between 3 to 8 people kind of crowding around this little projector area that I had set up like this. And I was like just screaming my head off for 2 days straight, doing exactly what I just did for you over and over and over again. And we just had a nonstop stream of people at the booth. So a lot of people seem very interested in it. And I think it really solves a big, big problem. You know, FileMaker. The problem with FileMaker has always been versioning. Versioning has always been the fundamental problem. I mean, there's always features that everyone wants. You know, people want, I want this feature and I want that feature, but it feels like versioning is the fundamental thing that's never been fixable.
Back in the mainframe days, you had the program always separate from the data, and if you could always change program without really touching the data. But since FileMaker, the data and the solution are so intertwined, it's hard to do the version. That's what I was thinking. If you had production and development, and you were able to merge them and so on and so forth like that.
Yeah, but I feel like this will. I feel like this will make the separation model much less mandatory. I mean, I understand totally why people use it. I don't like it. I don't know if anyone likes it, but it's like people do it because it's such a pain in the ass to not do it. But I hope that this kind of gives the best of both worlds, that you can have your nice, tidy single file solution, which works great on iOS devices and is easy to manage and is simple for the server and has all these benefits, while still having this ability to do this. I mean, like, it is literally a one-click update. If I were to, let's just say I make some layout changes here, I'm not going to make any schema changes. If I make I'll go ahead and make sure, I'll even make a schema change. If I change the layout here, and then I add a new field, there's a cool thing here that I should show. So I've added a new field called ATL Dev Meeting. Now let's say I forget that. I think that all I've done is some layout changes. And if all I did was layout changes, all I would need to do would be to run this green thing, the button, and it would work. And I forget that I added that new field. So I click this button. I do have to close the file. That's why I'm closing the files every time, because we're going to be opening them automatically. So we need to start with them closed. I say, yeah, go ahead. And what it's going to do is it's going to look at the schema and it's going to say, wait a second, there's a new field that's not part of your script. So you need to repaste the script. And so we do that by generating a hash of all the tables and fields and embedding that hash in the actual script and then comparing that to a new hash generated for the new list of tables and fields and seeing that they don't match. So all I need, what's that?
You don't need to copy, the scripts don't need to go. Okay.
So all I need to do, I mean.
Where are you repasting the script?
I'll show you. So I'm going to copy these script steps. They get put on my clipboard. And then I go into each file. If I have a multi-file solution here just for demonstration purposes. I go into each of my files and I go to this 360 deploy import worker script. I clear out everything that's in it. And I paste in the new steps there.
Because when you ran it initially, it made a list of all the fields with the additional new field that wasn't in. So instead of manually going here and adding one line to maybe a new field,
it's easier just to select all, delete, paste. So, and now I go into my main file. I go into that same import worker script. I just blow the whole thing away. I paste that in. The new one has the new field in it. And that's it. That's the entire process.
So you do need the folders on both copies?
I wasn't changing the development and production database. I was changing my two development databases because I have a multi-file solution.
I'm with you.
I wouldn't actually do it that way personally. I like single file solutions. And if it was a single file solution, I would only need to paste them into this one database.
Now, is there something that you could put on there that would get a variable that you didn't have to copy and paste that? It would actually make your list of all your fields and pop it right into your script without having to delete, copy, paste, delete, copy, paste?
No, it needs to be embedded in the actual structure of the file because remember, we're saving an empty clone. So we can't like put them in a table or anything like that because all of our tables are going to disappear when we save that empty clone. It needs to be something that's actually changed in the structure of the file. So that just finished. And again, if I look now at my production version, now I've got my new color scheme. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong file.
yeah, here's my production database. So I've got my 9 records. I've got my new color scheme. All I needed to do was copy and paste those scripts. And there's my ETL dev meeting. That's the new field I just added. And if I hadn't added new fields, I wouldn't even need to copy and paste the scripts. I would just click the deploy button again. So I think this is going to be pretty neat. And yeah, I'm excited about it. Thank you guys for taking a look at it.
It's cool.
Thank
What
you.
does it do about like FileMaker?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So the only thing that it knows how to update on the production file is serial numbers. It's not going to update value lists because there's no programmatic way to do that.
Right.
And it can't update accounts because we don't know what people's passwords were. Which means that if you are using external authentication, it's a non-issue. And so we use external authentication for all of our deployed databases. If you're using the built-in FileMaker accounts, if you're creating an account for each user in your production file, those aren't going to be there anymore when we replace that production file with the empty clone of the development file. And so, you know, you're only going to have the accounts that are in the development file. So what I would do in that case, if you can't use external authentication for some reason, is I would make it so that whenever you create a new account in your production file, you store the username and the encrypted password in a staff database. And then in your post import script, you loop through and you create all those records, all those accounts and privilege records from that stored users table. If you know how there's that option in FileMaker where you can say allow user to edit value list?
Okay.
I never use that. But if you do, then your users can click that and they can actually type new values directly into the hard-coded value list and they'll appear as new choices. That's embedded in the structure of the file. And that structure of the file is going to be lost when we replace it with the empty clone from the development server.
So it would be best to use
database
values.
Yeah, use a table. You know, if you want to have a dynamic value list, don't let users just edit it and type in a new value. Have them go into a table and add a record to that table and base your value list on the contents of those records.
So those are the only 2 cases, the value list and the user ID.
There are some other things, like for instance, stored queries. If you've got a user and they save a search that they did, that search is stored in the structure of the file, so that would not be preserved.
Is there a way to use,
those are the only ones that I know of.
would there be a way to easily get the data from the server file onto your local development file, short of like
Or
deploying?
just reversing the process?
Not so much, no, because you want your new file with their existing. Like you just want to bring down the data.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
And it may just be a,
Can't do that now.
right.
I think in many cases, I don't think I would usually want that because the more data you get, the slower it is to like add store calculations and work with the schema and stuff like that.
Sure.
But if you've got, you know, a fast development computer and you're not too big, then that might be a good idea.
I think it'd be good if you added a significant new feature, you want to test it with real data.
Right.
Yeah.
Staging comes in,
Yeah, I like the idea of,
but you still don't have the data.
now here's one problem with the idea of, so what I was thinking about your point that we could put an empty clone up on the production server, import all the data, and then instead of removing their real production file and overwriting with ours, we could just leave ours on there and just say, hey, you can log on there and try it out. And that works fine if it's a single file solution. If it's a multi-file solution, the file references are not going to work because they will be pointing at the wrong file. Although FileMaker 16, a little known feature of FileMaker 16 is that you can now use global variables in your file references, which means that you can have, it makes it much more feasible to rename your databases if you have, I think I do that in here actually.
But you can't like reuse it. Like once it like.
Yeah, once it's set, it stays there until you close the file.
Right, but you can like set up multiple ones of them, like 10 of them, 100 of them.
So,
Variable 1, variable 2.
yeah. So our first step that we do is when we open our inventory file is we set this global variable data file path equal to whatever our file name is in the word data. And that way I can read, as long as I name both the data, so hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I do that, and now if I look at external data sources, my inventory data file, prior to 16, this would have been illegal. I could put file : inventory data, but I can't just put a variable. Now in 16, you can do that. So what that means is that that's why it works okay on the production file. That's why it works for me to rename this file. It will still hold the references to my related database, because this global variable here, data file path, now is file : a_inventory data. So that allows you to, that if you did it that way, then it would work to leave those files open on the server like that.
Right, but then you have multiple hosted copies, and then your clients are like, which one do I go into?
That's a project management issue. Do you want me to leave the old one on there? Now I'm going to close that. Do you want
about use cases?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that took longer than I thought. Sorry.
This is exciting.
No, that's a very cool product.
Oh,
Just
cool.
how long
Yeah.
does it take, let's say you have a file that has 10 tables and 500,000 records in 2 or 3 of the tables, the contacts and the sales, how long
I mean, it really
would it
takes,
take to process?
it would take as long as it would take to manually import that into an empty clone, minus your human being time to click through the stuff.
Closing.
It's going to be local on the production server.
Yeah, well, assuming that you are running this on the production server, I would recommend running it on the production
So
server.
if you ran it here, it would run here.
Yes, when we do the import, we've got the 2 files in the server. We've got the old file with data, we've got the new empty clone. We're going to import from one to the other. That import doesn't happen on the server. We're not using like a perform script on server. We can't for a variety of reasons. So what we're doing is we're opening both files as a guest to FileMaker server, and we're just importing from one file to the other. So I would recommend, for speed purposes, that you do this process either on the physical FileMaker server box, or at least on a reasonably fast computer on the same network as your FileMaker server. You wouldn't want to have a server hosted on AWS in Virginia, for instance, and do this import from here in Atlanta, unless it was a small database and you didn't really care how long it took.
So you're actually closing your development copy, making a copy to your final server, and then deploying it from there.
Almost. The only exception is you don't actually have to close the development copy. If it's on a server, we can actually save it into clone without closing that file. But we use the FileMaker FMS admin command to save a clone without having to close the file. But
Is there
yeah,
any part of the deploy that changes your development copy version number so that you know that now what you're developing on that one is a different version than what you've already deployed?
I wouldn't want to do that. I feel like it's important for the developer to come in and manage, so my version here is 2. I think most people are going to have very particular things that they want to name their databases and very particular times that they do or don't want to change that. And if you haven't made any changes that could potentially affect like your import process, you really don't need to change it unless you have a reason that you want to. So I don't want to change that for people. And actually,
Or even a prompt that would come up that would allow them to enter it.
The thing to remember is the reason we do it this way, where it's a calculation field, is because remember that in the process here, we're saving an empty clone. Any data in that development file is gone. So we can't store anything anywhere other than embedded in the structure of the file. And there are very, very few ways, almost none that I can think of, that we can programmatically modify the structure of that file. So really, the only way to do it is to have a developer manually open a FileMaker, hit field definitions, and change that calculation. We can't change it for them. It would be really, really, really cool if we could. If there was some API, and I begged FileMaker for this, and I think they're starting to pay attention. If there was some API that we could go and say, add this field, change this field, delete this field, add this layout, add these 4 scripts, that would be super awesome. But until that happens, it pretty much needs to be a human being changing that field. We could prompt somebody, but then when they put their version in, there's no way for us to actually make the change in the file. Yeah. All right. Sorry to run so long.
Cool.
I'll mute myself here. And
He's on the host. He's the moderator now.
I just presented.
Yeah, but you're logged in.
no, you know, it's,
Oh, okay.
You should over.
Oh,
I kicked him out.
I misunderstood.
That's what I mean.
I was like, I get a free pass for that.
I thought you were broadcasting. Right.
We'll talk about next time.
Access versus FileMaker shootout.
No. All right. Well, let's see him prepare.
FileMaker, next.
I've never actually used Access.
Really? You're lucky.
It's that good, is it?
It's ugly.
Sounds like an AC/DC song.
Next month, let's see. Let me check the calendar. So we
I
think
saw
that
recommendation
because
last month.
next month looks like it's going to be close to Labor Day weekend.
One day out.
Yeah, Labor Day weekend's coming from the week before, the weekend before. Maybe.
We still connected to the thing.
Mm-hmm. There's people watching. I don't know. If you're watching and have suggestions, type them in. Oh wait, I'm gonna get this thing back up again.
How many people are watching
right now?
Did we get any chats coming?
Questions?
Well, not in the.
Need to get answered last
Get a
week.
pen over and send a picture of the pizza.
The Brondo ad is what I want to send out.
That was a scary movie.
Was it?
Especially now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a comedy. But it's supposed to be a documentary. Democracy?
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
A little too close to home right now.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Does the development copy just need to be like, or does it need to be like, posted?
Well, we need to be able to say the clone. And so-
Patricia says hi.
Hi.
Patricia, tell us to talk about next time.
So we need to be able to save a clone.
What if it's already?
Talked about that. Sam and I talked about that, and there's really nothing preventing us from doing that. We just didn't know if it would be important or not.
Vertical market stuff, like here, like you put your space is just an empty, and it just needs to download the file.
Right. Right. Like, what if we could make it so like you could make a zip of your clones and just embed them into a container field? You know, and just send people the file with that as a container field. I really kind of like
Or
the
just
idea
like
of
inserts from URL.
yeah, that could work too. I really like the idea of just saying development server. It's publicly accessible at this address. Let's just say it's an Amazon box. Make there. Whenever you want to, you run this deployer and it'll go and get our current development version. I mean, wouldn't that be cool if you could just say to a client, oh yeah, I just fixed that a minute ago. Run that installer tool right now and you'll get it.
Or it'd be cool if like your vertical market solution, like new to check something, like
It just in startup, you could have a URL that they pull the latest version down.
Or similar to the way the Apple does its update on the iPhone. Some way, where you do the updates when you get a
Just a little flag so there's a new version available.
yeah.
Yeah, and since the solution is unlocked, you could definitely script something in your own solution
to trigger that other file.
But the thing that,
Right, well, hold on a second. First, you're gonna get a meeting topic for next time, so. Before we get too far off track on this. Yeah.
Just
you're not gonna
present it.
Something you're talking about?
It was that one, when we demoed, last meeting, the guy that had the layout, that had everything all in the one layout, and was navigating to everything. No, it wasn't starting point.
I say we volunteer Marty for something. It's his punishment for not being.
boy, am I glad I'm here.
Yeah, Marty. For what's the worst thing you can sign?
12 sessions.
Themes, layout themes.
The new OAuth stuff, how to set up all the new OAuth, because they don't have to make accounts with all the different providers.
But was there anything else at DevCon? DevCon Part 2? Of anything else that was?
I know Catherine went to a few sessions, but I think she went to some of the same sessions you did. I know she went to the How to Train Your Junior session.
I don't know what else you have to.
Yeah, and
She's gonna know all your secrets now too, and she's like, I know what you're doing.
Do I train my junior?
Throw them in the deep end, right?
Do we have anybody on our remote? If you go to a remote presentation.
There might be some other vendors or something we can contact.
Which vendors do you
got it.
suggest?
That guy that did the shipping thing, it was amazing, and we were the only two that attended, so.
Yeah, you did a good job. At
Encore.
at DevCon too.
Shipping vendors, energy.
At least that would be like a half meeting, I guess, that would be the long presentation, if we were doing a short and long.
I'm gonna go through that again. Things. All right. Well, I guess we'll end this stream for now. Patricia, we were counting on you.
Bye, guys.
All right, bye.
All right.